For my third video, I'm going to show you the technique of making agate ware or swirl ware, which is what we call it over in the United States. Over in Japan, where it first started, it's called narikomi, and it's more intricate. It's colored porcelains that are done in specific designs to create a more complex pattern than what I'm going to be doing today. Swirl ware is done by a lot of different potters, especially in the South. There are different techniques, but I'm going to show you how I do my swirl ware, and I'm going to show you some finished examples of my work right now. So swirl ware uses different colors of clay. You want to make sure that you're using all the same firing temperature, and I'm using a stoneware that's fired up to cone 6 in the kiln. I use a white stoneware like what I use for my little soap dishes in the previous videos, and then I have sort of a light toasty brown stoneware that I like to use when I'm making my face jugs, and then there is a dark brick red, a red stone, as you can see that. So to prepare for swirl ware, what I do is I slice off the layers and I put them together sort of like a sandwich. I always put white in between the colors. That's just what I do. Different potters do it different ways. And then it's slammed together. And so what you end up having when you slam it together, you don't want to wedge it because the colors would blend in too much. You end up having bricks that show the different layers. And I slice these off in about 1.5 pounds to make my mugs. There's a finished mug. You can see more of the dark red here, not so much of the lighter toasty color. And then I also do other pieces like honey pots. This one you can see all 3 colors. It's pretty neat. I like how the bottom is. This has a clear glaze on it over it, so it's not a glaze technique. It is the layers of clay that are showing the color, and then clear glaze seal on top. It's very important that you use, like I said, the same firing temperature stoneware. I like to use Tucker's because they test every batch, and I know that I'm going to get consistent results. So I've already measured out about 1.5 pounds, and I'm going to turn it on the wheel. Some of the tools I'm using today, I'm using different rib tools, and I'm using, of course, my little undercut that you saw me use the other day. I'm using my sponges, my elephant ear, and my little, because I like to throw with the sponge. And if I need to trim the tip or whatever, I've got my trusty needle tool. And if you're doing things in series, of course you want to measure. So I will probably be measuring the height of my mugs that I'm going to be working in production today, so that they're all pretty similar. Everything is one of a kind, obviously, because it's all hand done. I'm not a machine. But it's always good to have a trusty ruler on hand. And then the final rib that I'm going to be using is this metal rib that has a straight side and a serrated. The serrated side I'm not going to use, obviously, but I'm going to use this as the final part to scrape off the slip that's created as I'm turning the piece, so that you can actually see the result of the swirl colors. And this will be exciting. It's just like snowflakes that fall from the sky. Fortunately, in the South, we don't have to shovel that too much. Today is rainy. I'd rather have rain than snow. And so what I'm going to be doing is throwing this, and we're going to see what results we get. So this should be fun. One of the things that beginners have the most difficulty with is centering. And it's easier to center clay if it's not too hard, not too stiff, obviously. And it's good muscle control. And sometimes you see potters and they're pulling it way up into this big cone and then squishing it down, and they'll say that that's to get the air out, and it somewhat does, but you don't have to be so dramatic and pulling it up to a huge pyramid to get the same effects. So you can see I center pretty quickly. Then the next thing I do is I'm going to open my pot, and as I tell all beginners, when you open the pot, you want to be careful not to go all the way down to the bottom of the vat, because, well, then you have a hole in the bottom, and unless you're making something that has to have a hole in the bottom. But it's always good to leave about 1/4 of an inch. I throw kind of quickly, and as I told you before, I like to use a sponge so I don't have to keep on going back and getting a lot of water on the wheel and making a big slurry mess. So I've quickly opened up my pot to the diameter that I need, and I make sure that I go back and forth to firm up those molecules. Remember I told you about that, because you don't want those S-cracks to appear later on. Sometimes when I'm throwing a lot of production, you know, towards the end of the day I get kind of tired, and I always find out that those are the pieces that usually will end up having an S-crack. All right, so now I'm at the stage where I'm going to be pulling, and pulling means my fingers are inside and my sponge on the outside are going at the same motion. And because this is a small amount of clay, I'm actually touching one hand with the other by using my thumb as a guide. This helps a lot. So you go at the same speed. You might be able to see some of the swirl happening. I can see it happening already. All right, so now let me just quickly show you what's going to happen here when I clean this so you can see. Ah, look at that. So these are more horizontal rather than spiraling up, but still quite pretty. On my mugs, I like to belly them out a little bit because, first of all, that gives more volume to your cup of coffee. I'll use this rib right here. Get rid of some of this on the bottom. All of my clay gets recycled one way or another. The swirlware clay goes into a separate bag, and when it goes to the pug mill, I'll use it for some other project. Go back in again. Make sure I don't have any water on the inside of the pot that's hanging around, because clay is lazy. And if you leave puddles of clay inside of your pot, the clay that's at the bottom the molecules are going to loosen up again, and that's another way you can get an S-crack. Let me show you how this tool here does. I think I'll put a little foot on it. One end is a little bit bigger than the other. So I'm going to get that wet. It's always good to get it wet so that it'll slide. Slow the wheel down a little bit. Here. And as you can see, it leaves this nice little ridge here at the bottom. It's kind of neat. It's important to really make sure that on any of your pots that you have a good edge. I take the sponge and I'm pushing in on that edge. The rim is what gets beat up the most, and so you want to be able to make sure that that's going to hold up. And it's also, on a mug, it's comfortable on your lip to have a rounded lip. More comfortable to drink out of. So let's go slower. So you can see it's more horizontal because I threw slower. If I was throwing faster or pulling faster, I would have more of a spiral effect. But that's how how I do my swirlware. So if you have any questions of this video or the techniques that I show, don't hesitate to ask a question and I'll try to answer it the best of my ability. So just go ahead and make some happy little pots. Have a great day.